Hey guys, welcome to Gwent. Let's have a talk about Veto Immunity and Armor. And actually in the closed beta we had Veto Immunity. And many units had Veto Immunity on them, and at least a couple of them were actually pretty popular. For example, small and big foglets used to have Veto Immunity on them, and currently they get murdered by fog. And other Vetos as well. Which might seem a little bit silly, but for the most part I understand why they got rid of it. They changed weather quite a lot, and it used to affect both sides of the board, but this is not a history lesson. But the short version is that making no units very immune does allow you to use the weather on every single one of them, and that allows more interaction between players. For example, like gold cards cannot be interacted with, and that's just no fun. And or your opponent having units that you cannot interact with is just a bit lame if your deck is all about just trying to get some better value. However, whether we consider that the positive or the negative change, I feel like some cards that lost their Veto Immunity should have stayed the same. And most importantly, that's the spies. Because you can easily negate their strength. So we have Frightener over here. You can throw the Frightener into the Frost, and it pulls in another unit with himself. And in 5 turns, the disadvantage of playing the Frightener will be completely negated in a Bronze Weather alone. And that's not too hard to pull off. And I don't really want Veto Immunity to come back on a large scale, but on a small scale, it kind of makes sense, especially for the card advantage spies. Maybe not the small spies like Emissary. If they get killed by Weather, like, okay, you got some extra advantage for that. I don't feel like those cards really need to be Weather immune, but the big spies that give you card advantage probably need to be. That's my takeaway, because it's just too easy to negate their disadvantage. And it is just very tempting to play Frost. And this is just about like countering Weather and making Weather more reasonable. And there's another card we can consider, and another mechanic, and that's Armor. So let's just look at Nilfgaardian Knight. Currently, Armor is like temporary hit points. It doesn't help your strength, but it does prevent, like it does block some damage. Let's just call it block. And it would be interesting at least to consider like an alternative use for Armor, or alternative like mechanic for Armor, is that Armor never goes away. So for example, if you put down the Nilfgaardian Knight, then if you play Frost on it, it would take 1 damage that would be negated by the Armor. And this 2 armor would never go away. So as long as it's taking, so if you put it in the Fog, then it would take 2 damage, but that would be nothing. And that absorbs a given amount of damage dealt to the unit. It even says that, but you actually lose the armor, it's not permanent. And I believe it should be permanent. It would allow some kind of pseudo Veto immune unit. So for example, some units would have like 1 armor that would make them immune to, not immune, but resistant to Frost. And some units could have 2 armor, and that would make them resistant to all Bronze Weather effects. And of course, this could be very valuable as well. I'm not saying this effect needs to be like widespread, but it could provide an alternative counter to some Weather, without just giving every single unit Weather immunity. It would allow for more fine-tuning, and most of all, it would make a specific card not completely pointless. It's the Overdose card that could remove armor and deal some damage. And if you use this card, you can actually just remove armor permanently from the units. So this would be a card you might want to actually consider if you're running a Vetter deck. Again, this is just something I bring up. I do strongly believe in spies getting Vetter immunity, because it is maybe a little bit too easy just to get them killed off and just get a permanent advantage that way. However, even if this armor mechanic wouldn't get changed, I would like to see some mechanic like that come into the game. Because it would be cool just to have a unit that like can resist the frost. You can just, it's like a semi-counter to Vetter. Of course, it would be like somewhat resistant to fog and rain, but would be completely resistant to frost. And I think it's worth considering, most definitely. And of course, if you would get hit by direct damage, for example, you have 7 health and 2 armor, then you would take 5 health damage, 5 strength, you would lose 5 strength, and ultimately you would end up with 2 strength and 2 armor, because you wouldn't lose the armor by taking damage. I'm not saying armor should change, but it would be an interesting mechanic to consider for the game. And if the devs want to keep Vetter very impactful, then they consider adding this mechanic into the game, or at least making like immune boost a lot more tempting to include. Because right now, even in this heavily Vetter infested meta, this card is not seeing much of any use. Because it might just buy you a little bit of time. It is just not a popular card. And I would love to see, like, yeah, if you actually bother to play this card instead of the Thunderbolt Potion, you can make yourself immune to Vetter, you can make yourself immune to Lacerate, and that's just like a trade you make, less power for the protection of potentially getting screwed over by rule affecting effects. So that's it, guys. Tell me what you think. I'm not saying I'm not saying armor should change, but I would like to see some kind of mechanic like armor that just stays on and blocks damage and is permanent. If they wanna keep Vetter impactful, but they might just make Vetter weaker. Maybe that's gonna be okay. But I would like to see Vetter stay strong, but have potential counters. For example, if you're just like a little bit sick of biting frost, you might just put in the guys that have 1 armor. Or maybe you just put in the Cadmany Seed support that gives units 1 armor. And that would be like, hey, if the meta is like infested with frost, then you can just run that. And if the meta is like not very heavy, then it might not worth it to run a deck like that. Anyway, guys, that's it. Tell me what you think. And thanks for watching, and see you next time.